So the Fiedler programs are free and they're in person or virtual. Some examples of the Fiedler programs are rigid container courses. There's also premier OR grade surgical instrument courses. And then there's also some water quality courses as well.
Rising above the buzz of ultrasonic cleaners and the clanking of stainless steel are the ideas and voices that are changing an industry. You're listening to the Beyond Clean podcast, the central nexus for the people, processes, and products that are improving our sterile processing world. Each week, we speak with frontline technicians, CEOs, engineers, and entrepreneurs with a common goal to help you fight dirty. Every instrument, every time. Whether you're tuning in for education or inspiration, we're glad you did. Now, turn on those washers and turn up the volume. It's time to go beyond clean.
On this Vendor Spotlight, we speak with Taylor Hamscher, Associate Product Manager at Aesculap USA, and today we're going to be talking about all things education. Aesculap has quite a substantial portfolio of educational programs that are in person and virtual online, and so they educated quite a number of people throughout the pandemic online, and we're even going to get some statistics today in our conversation with Taylor. We're going to be right back after a short break with Taylor Hamscher, Associate Product Manager at Aesculap USA.
From 17 studios, you're listening to Beyond Clean, the global voice of sterile processing.
Joining us now is Taylor Hamscher, Associate Product Manager at Aesculap USA. And Taylor, we're going to be talking about something very near and dear to my heart. I love education. I love doing educational programs. And now that the pandemic is, I wouldn't say over, but on the downswing and live events are back, I'm looking forward to getting in front of some groups. But during that time, everybody, including Beyond Clean, got really creative with all the different ways that we could continue to deliver education to the frontline staff, even as maybe they were getting a little tight in terms of the ability to do education because there weren't a lot of staff. We have a shortage right now. And so we're going to be talking about everything that you and the team over at Aesculap USA has done around education. It's going to be a fun conversation today. Thanks so much for coming on.
Hi, thank you for having me, Justin. I'm really excited to talk about our education programs because that is what my main focus is at Aesculap. I am the Associate Product Manager for the educational programs on the healthcare solutions side. Our educational programs are a big part of our team, and it's actually part of a bigger picture that works towards helping hospitals operate with greater precision.
Oh, I like that. Operate with greater precision. And it's all about accuracy, right? And even as you talk about all the turnover that's been going on in the industry, to maintain that level of precision, we have a whole new workforce, people coming in for the first time. Not that this didn't happen before, but with the shortages, education is so key. What else have you kind of noticed that's been going on in the industry that it's always needed education, but what has really elevated that over the last several years?
Yeah, so when we think about our educational programs, we look at them and we identify the 4 key areas. So there's patient outcomes, operational efficiency, sustainability, and the big one for education is clinical and staff satisfaction. And like you said, there is a shortage of staff right now, so we take into consideration the day-to-day of what an SPD tech goes through and their experiences.
So I like those 4 areas. Obviously, everybody's concerned with patient outcomes, and I think that operational efficiency talks specifically to that operate with greater precision. I mean, to be precise, it also helps to be efficient. They kind of work hand in hand. Sustainability is key because whatever you're doing in the department, you want to be able to maintain it. So as you make improvements, you want those to continue for the duration, not just be something that's a short-term fix that we keep coming back and trying to fix again and again. But I think the thing that really helps sterile processing departments prevent being bogged down is clinical and staff satisfaction. So that end user up there, the internal customer in the operating room, making sure that they're happy with the instruments and the equipment that are coming in for the cases. That's so critical. So when you talk about clinical and staff satisfaction, what are some key components to that for you?
So there's three main components that we take into consideration, and that's reducing the assembly errors and the errors in the OR. And then we want to reduce the knowledge gaps, and we want to reduce frustration within the SPD. So, I mean, just like you said earlier, there is a shortage, but also we want to make sure that the SPD techs and staff are coming to work every day feeling confident about what they're doing and confident with their job. Because if you're confident with what you're doing and in your job, you're not going to hate going to work every day. You're going to start loving your job. You're going to want to make people's lives better and realize the impact that you're making in the industry because you know what you're doing and you feel that confidence. So we're trying to emphasize that we care about clinical and staff satisfaction through our educational programs.
Well, the more you know, I think the more confidence and then obviously less frustration for everybody, because that can really get into this like vicious cycle when there's errors in assembly and then those errors are experienced in the operating room. That obviously creates a lot of frustration for them, but also in sterile processing, when the call comes down, hey, we have errors, there's this issue. And so I know not all of the time are those issues related to knowledge gaps, but especially when you have newer staff in the department, and honestly, that knowledge gap could be on the operating room side. Like, education isn't just for sterile processing technicians around sterile processing. It's great when the operating room gets that education and that insight as well, because there might be an expectations breakdown from a lack of awareness between the two departments. But ultimately, when that all leads to frustration, things get really tense and it does become that vicious cycle. I mean, all three of those areas are so interconnected.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And that's why we actually go to conventions like AORN and Hspa, because we not only want to hit the sterile processing department with our education, we also want to reach out to the nurses and specifically the operating room nurses. But it's great to get out there and be able to offer our educational programs to not just the SPD, but everyone who wants to take them.
I used to love doing education or in-booth education at AORN because I would always highlight so many of the important inspection points and areas around device design that might be improved or require extra attention. And I always thought, you know, the nurses, especially when they're not in the middle of their day-to-day, were so receptive to that information and really took a great deal of interest, because going back to something you said before was those four areas, patient outcomes. I mean, that's what they really care about in the operating room is we have this patient in front of us and we want to make sure that this surgery goes well and that the patient outcome is a positive one. So as we start diving into your educational portfolio, what are some things that set you apart from other companies that do education for sterile processing?
So I think what differentiates us from the competition is that we have a huge educational portfolio available, and it's through multiple channels. So that includes in-person, virtual, and on-site. Our curriculums are up to date, they're relevant, and what's really cool is that they're delivered by trained and certified specialists, but they're also created by those trained and certified specialists. So we don't just have them deliver the courses, we actually have them in the process of creating the courses.
And are all those people, do they work for Aesculap, or are they also out in the field? Like, who are the trained and certified specialists?
So we have our sales force that give the courses, and then we also have some consultants that we hire. They do our booth education for the conventions. And then we also do training for our sales force where we have internal specialists come in and train our sales team.
So you talked about, speaking at other conventions like AORN and HSPA, and we talked about educating the operating room in addition to the sterile processing team. How are these accredited for CEs, or are they available for CEs? And is it only for sterile processing, or do you give nursing credits as well?
So all of our courses are continuing education units. It depends on what the course is, but we do offer the units for all the courses.
And what are some examples of some of the programs? Are they free, by the way?
Yes. So the Fiedler programs are free and they're in person or virtual. Some examples of the Fiedler programs are rigid container courses. There's also premier OR grade surgical instrument courses. And then there's also some water quality courses as well.
Yeah. And I saw the list of the courses, and what I like about the one specific to surgical instruments and really identifying OR grade instruments, because I remember when I used to work out in the field, we'd see a lot of these Pakistan instruments coming in from the clinics, especially if there was an emergency admit to the emergency room, like they would find their ways into the trays, and they weren't OR grade instruments. And so being able to identify that is so key. But a lot of times you don't really know what goes into the manufacturing that separates it. Like you might have been told, look for stamped instruments that say Pakistan versus German stainless steel and some other indicators of quality OR grade instruments. But what I liked about this list was there's one program that talks about the manufacturing process. So that's a little bit of a behind the scenes look to the why are you looking for this specific grade and what is the application. Am I right about that?
Yeah, they're really cool. And also, like, the pictures in them are actual pictures that we have taken out in the field. So it's really cool to be able to say that our sales team has also helped out with providing the tools and the images for these educational programs.
Water quality too it's the topic that comes up constantly out there, especially when there's, renovations or anytime there's an issue that comes up around staining. People immediately start looking at water quality and how to do some assessment around water quality. I can't tell you how many times I would have customers when I was still working as a vendor representative reach out to me and say, hey, we have this staining issue. Or sometimes even on rigid containers, there'd be like a white film that would sometimes show up. And the first place everybody would look would be, how do we assess the water quality? So I could see you getting a lot of interest in that program.
Yeah. And actually we did a Beyond Clean boot camp, and that's one of our premium on-site multi-day programs. And our surgical asset management team, which is called our SAM team, helped us develop that program. And it's a 6-module program. There's lessons in it like water quality, principles of cleaning and decontamination, and care, inspection, and assembly are just to name a few. But we worked very hard with our SAM team to make sure that there was a consistency throughout our other programs. And one of the main things that we focused on was staining. And I know you mentioned that, but we took all of our staining information from multiple programs and utilized our SAM team to combine them and create a table that we could consistently use throughout all our programs.
Yeah, I like that, because I've definitely seen some programs not necessarily contradict each other, but they're not always sending the same message. And so the takeaway, from the audience might be different from one program to another. You mentioned all these free programs through Fiedler, and typically those are approved for nurses, operating room nurses, et cetera. I've definitely had programs that I've run through Fiedler in the past for prior employers, but I think you also have HSPA lesson plans. And I know there may be plenty of people out there that still refer to HSPA as ISHM. So just in case, when we say HSPA, we also formerly known as ISHM, but you have lesson plans for all the different certifications. I would say it applies to CE credits for all the different certifications through HSPA.
Our HSPA lesson plans are actually created by SMEs, subject matter experts. So we actually have our marketing team work on those and create those. And it's kind of cool to get our names on things and be able to show our expertise in those certain subjects. So we are actually currently working on a few of those this year to release.
Excellent. I can't wait to see that staining table. I haven't had a chance to view that yet, but I know that's a huge resource. I mean, it's one of those things I almost want to, if I'm in the department, I almost want to print it out and put it up on the wall and just have everybody view it. Actually, I can see you nodding as we're talking. I'm assuming that that's the purpose of the staining table.
Yeah, so we actually, when we created it, we included pictures, we included what kind of stain it was, what causes it, how to prevent it. It's like a huge table. And yes, in presentations, we have just the picture and kind of like a pop-up that explains the different things that you can do to prevent these and what causes it. But also, I mean, the idea is if people enjoy this, we want to include the PDF version of it so that they can print it out, laminate it, keep it with them just for their use. And if they're using Aesculap products, I mean, it will be super helpful in the SPD to be able to identify those stains. And that was actually a collaboration of 4 SMEs, which is crazy to actually get like 4 people together who are just experts on the area and be able to create such a table that, you know, it's going to be useful in the industry.
You know, it's one thing to create educational content and presentations. It's another thing to create resources or tools that can reinforce that knowledge and also help folks troubleshoot issues that come up on a common basis. That's what I really love about that table idea and that concept is that's something that can really help people and they can reference back to it instead of thinking, oh, wait, what did I hear about that? Or the game of telephone can sometimes water down, well, I saw this on one presentation or I saw that. And so this provides a resource that will help maintain consistency in the understanding of how to troubleshoot the staining. What do you have in terms of like statistics, or what can you tell us about how much education you've already provided to the industry to date?
In 2021, we were very successful in our educational programs. And I mean, with the pandemic, we only had 1,579 people that we educated in person, but that was across 455 programs. Now, when you think about it, what are our virtual and online courses like? Through a pandemic, we actually educated over 40,400 people, and that was only over 6 online courses.
Yeah, you provided some of these statistics to me in advance of our conversation today, and I'm just looking at the ones that were the most popular from the online courses. And still, what a credit to your team to educate nearly 1,600 people in the middle of the pandemic in person and doing 455 total programs. So I can look at the numbers. I can extrapolate that out. You know, that's like only 3 or 4 people. That tells you how busy everyone in the departments were at the time and how many people could actually be made available for education. So it's not really a surprise to me that there would be this enormous shift and you'd educate 40,000 people in online courses because so much of the educational content was accessed in that virtual manner. But I'm looking at like the ones that were the most popular, right? So rigid containers for immediate use steam sterilization, over 9,000 people took that course in 2021. That's incredible. And the next 4 all had over 7,000. So the 2 OR grade surgical instrument programs, the manufacturing process, and then 1 on tips for care, which is so important. That's one you just got to get in front of your OR staff. Caring for surgical instruments doesn't start in decon and end in sterilization. It happens throughout the entire life cycle of that tray. Maintaining the sterile barrier in the real world, that's definitely a very OR related topic. And then maintaining quality surgical instruments. But the one that I think, this one's a lower number, not in that 7,000 range like the other ones, is the water quality one like we talked about before. I got to think after this interview, there's going to be a huge uptick in the number of people that are going to do that course online around water quality because it is just a constant conversation in sterile processing. Taylor, anything you want to add to those programs and the success of the entire educational team at Aesculap?
So we actually used the educational program Maintaining the Sterile Barrier in the Real World at our conventions this year. And the reason why we did that was because we wanted to focus kind of on rigid containers because that was our focus of our booth this year with the launch of our new container. So we were able to take our new container and add it into the new educational program and update it with this year's launch. So it was really nice to educate the crowd on rigid sterile containers and maintaining the sterile barrier in the real world. And then after they did their educational program, they were able to come over to the other side of the booth and kind of see what new things we had to offer and what we were doing to advance in the sterile processing world. And we did that by taking what we heard from our customers and utilizing that in our new container. So we wanted to make sure that we were being able to educate on our product and then show what we did to make the product better.
All right. Well, congratulations on the launch of the new container system. And I know this is going to be a series of vendor spotlights here on Beyond Clean. So certainly if you're listening to this spotlight and you haven't listened to the others yet, be on the lookout because there is going to be more information to come. I'm glad we got this all kicked off talking about education, Taylor, but I also want to make sure that everybody who's listening knows how they can access education, engage your team. How should they reach out to y'all?
We have our website, which is aesculapusa.com. And then we also have our Aesculap Academy, which you can access through the website, or you could contact your local representative directly to take these programs and kind of organize if you want to do it in person or virtual.
That's right. We created a URL through Beyond Clean that will take you directly to Aesculap Academy. So if you want to peruse those online courses, go to educate.beyondclean.net/Aesculap, and I'll go ahead and spell that AESCULAP. And really, Taylor, we talked a lot about closing knowledge gaps, really increasing the quality that hits the OR and reducing errors, and confidence was a big theme in our conversation to reduce frustration. So I just want to thank you so much for all the work that you're doing to educate the industry. Again, we're obviously big believers of that here at Beyond Clean, and it's central to what we do, but it also kind of has us in a good deal of alignment, and being able to have content that's available, not in person, was a great way to meet an increasing demand during the pandemic. So I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And again, we just are looking to increase clinical and staff satisfaction through our educational programs. And we hope that we can give hospital staff the confidence and reduce frustration in their profession through our training and our educational programs. And we want our educational programs to be a resource that's readily available to a hospital and ensure that they operate with greater precision. And I hope that you guys listen to the rest of our series because you'll see the bigger picture that Aesculap is looking to create by operating with greater precision.
That was Taylor Hamscher, Associate Product Manager at Aesculap USA. We're talking about all of the educational offerings that Aesculap has, not only for frontline sterile processing team members, but your counterparts in the operating room. The programs are approved by Fiedler. They're free. They can be done in person or virtual, at least that's for the OR. And then HSPA lesson plans as well, also free. Some really great programs here. And one thing that I'm really excited about was something that we did in a partnership to help create the Beyond Clean boot camps with Aesculap. And again, 6 modules, water quality being one of them, surgical asset management team contributing to that, 4 subject matter experts also creating the staining table, which I think is a huge resource. And not only is it educational, but it's something that you can have available after the education for the entire department to look back on, especially when it comes to troubleshooting potential issues around water quality. I do want to remind everybody that you can find Aesculap on their website, aesculapusa.com. That's AESCULAPUSA.com. And you can also go to the Aesculap Academy by visiting that website and then clicking on Academy, or you can use our vanity URL, educate.beyondclean.net/Aesculap. And as Taylor encouraged, if you do want education and you want to get pointed in the right direction, or you want in-person education, you can contact your local Aesculap representative directly. That's going to do it for this Vendor Spotlight. As a reminder, you can help support Beyond Clean by subscribing on Apple, Amazon, or Google Podcasts, as well as Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or your favorite podcast application by simply searching for Beyond Clean Podcast. We've also got bonus content for certain episodes, but you got to download our smartphone app for iPhone or Android. And while you're there, we'd certainly appreciate a rating and a review, because your feedback is important to the show. If you have any topics that you'd like us to cover on a future episode, or if you just have general feedback for us, you can email info@beyondclean.net. Thank you for listening to this Vendor Spotlight on Beyond Clean.